I'd like to welcome the audience for our second Dataquest Microsoft Smart Hybrid Workshop. So last time, I think we had a very great session last time. Amit will agree. It was quite, a great exchange of ideas. I mean, I was really surprised by the audience questions. The audience was the questions were not like formalities. They were really curious minds who wanted to, know things. So I think let's hope we can take that discourse forward. And what I'd like to do is maybe we are going to have a lot of great presentations today and workshops and all. Maybe Amit is going to be giving the first presentation, but I think we have with us Amit, Shubham, Parimal, and Siddharth. Maybe if everyone can come on camera and introduce themselves first, and then we can go forward.
So Shubham and Siddharth, you guys go because I'll end and then kick off from there.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Sunil. So, just to give a quick introduction, my name is Shubham Dubey. I'm a technical architect at Microsoft Technology Center. For those of who probably interacting for the first time, what MTC is, it's an experience center, and we are across 44. I mean, we have 44 different centers. And I represent Microsoft India, Microsoft Tech Center India, and we are predominantly on-premises setup based out of Bangalore. So today we'll talk about some really cool stuff in terms of demonstrating. So our mantra is less of slides, more of demos. So yeah, we really look forward for this.
So Sunil, we took your challenge up from last time.
Great. That's great. That would.
Siddharth.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Siddharth this side. I'm part of the Surface team. I'm the product marketing manager for Surface. So joining with Amit and Shubham this time to sort of share some insights around how devices are playing a key role in ensuring that institutes and organizations across students, faculty are sort of using devices that are secure. So happy to be with you. Looking forward to the session today.
Excellent. Thank you. So Sunil, thanks for the opportunity again. And I guess last time went well enough for me to be invited again. So
Right. That's true.
I think that's the testament to what happened last time. And I was just sharing that with Shubham and Siddharth. So the aim is again to not do the Gyanbazi and do more of the showbazi.
Right.
So that's why we brought out the big guns with Shubham from the MTC and Siddharth, and I'll do my little sutradhar for the day, and I'll play that and answer any questions as we go along. So really appreciate this whole conversation. I'll ground ourselves back in what we kind of introduced with the last session, which is how are we approaching this whole enabling hybrid teaching and learning. So number one, we are approaching it from guidance, as in sharing the best practices, how we actually see good deployments of technology when it comes to digital transformation. So the way we do that is using this framework called the Education Transformation Framework. In fact, few of us got together and wrote a book about it. I was fortunate enough to contribute towards the success of the content as well. So that's kind of the guidance part of it. It's more of the how-to manual, if you like, in terms of navigating the complexity of transformation. Security definitely is one of the components of that conversation. And we can go into each of these areas that you see in the transformation framework. It covers leadership, teaching, student success, intelligent environments, and all those things. So safety, security, and privacy, not just from a physical perspective, but also digital perspective, is one of the components. And today's session is probably a little bit more geared towards that, a little bit more geared towards how we are, making sure that we have a leader IT development as well happening from a security perspective. And it really fits in with the rest of the leadership policy changes that we're trying to make in education as well. So it's kind of a holistic approach. I strongly encourage you to look at it, use what is useful for you. We're not saying that's the only framework. There are many frameworks out there, but whatever works for you, happy for you to take and contribute back to the community as you feel fit. In the middle of this diagram is the future-proof IT infrastructure, or the kind of the solution set, if you like, from Microsoft perspective, which we are fundamentally, the approach we're taking is to make that IT inclusive by design, fosters a well-being of the constituents who are going to be using this from a social emotional perspective, from a usage perspective, from an inclusion and accessibility perspective. Of course, we want to enable an environment that accelerates learning and develops career readiness, all built on the foundation of trust and security. And I didn't just make this slide up because today's conversation is about security, but that's the fundamentals of identity, security, management, and compliance. And today, as we said, demo heavy conversation will be covering the identity, security, and the management aspects of this whole story. And lastly, I'll cover the readiness part of it, because of course, if you're going to invest in a platform like this, you want your educators, your IT pros, and your faculty and all the constituents and stakeholders to have access to the readiness that gets them to use this platform in a meaningful way that adheres to your education transformation aspirations that we talked about at the beginning. So it's kind of a three-part story. Get the guidance, use the platform, get yourself ready to use it. So in today's conversation, of course, we're going to be focused highly on the actual, why security is such a topic of choice for today, but also why it's top of mind for so many institutions out there. With the wealth of information regarding students, faculties, payments, research, and all the rich data that makes up a university, it's a prime target for malicious actors. The stats are also unfortunately not in our favor when it comes to education. We are the #1 targeted industry in the world. And the stats in India are even more scary, because I think we have some stats to also prove what's going on. So before I get to the stats, I just want to make sure that we are grounded on how we get to this hybrid teaching and learning environment. And that is by actually looking at a secure device, the secure endpoint that is managed. We are then making sure that we know who you are, who's accessing this environment, by looking at your existing LMS or SIS, and we are creating an authoritative digital identity database in our Azure Active Directory, which then enables us to have all the different services like mail, storage, collaboration platform, Intune, Microsoft Defender for security. All of that happens when I know who you are and which device you're coming in from. And we'll talk a little bit about this through the demos as well. But I want to ground everyone on the reality that these foundational services are absolutely critical when it comes to having a successful education experience using the various applications like Office, Teams, browsing using secured Edge browser, OneNote for your note taking and your curriculum content distribution, homework, quiz, notes. All of those things happen through, again, a secure platform that has been created on top of these foundational services. Other experiences like whiteboarding, Minecraft, STEM subjects can be taught through Visual Studio Code, creating, managing, sharing videos securely across your organization, because increasingly content is going not just in docs and PowerPoints and Excel files, it's now becoming video. So video becomes a first party or a first grade citizen in this conversation around how we see videos as a document or a storage mechanism of data and information. The other thing I touched on earlier was the whole professional development. There's a complete platform that has been created, which is Microsoft Learn, that enables you to take advantage of how to use our tools for education, but also our tools as a content curriculum for your higher education students as well. So we provide not just the content about our platform, but also how we can get users, our students certified so that they can go and look for jobs using our tools as well. And finally, if we are going to invest in such a platform, we want to make sure we understand how this is going to be used. So Teams Insights, Azure Synapse, Power Platform are a great way for us to actually showcase the usage of this platform and the impact it has to your teaching and learning outcomes. So it's a complete story from the looking at your user database through to the usage of the platform through to actually giving you the analytics and insights. So it becomes quite a well-rounded experience for everybody. Now, what we are seeing is, as we see deployments happen around the world, a lot of the deployments are focused on the end results. The priority is to deploy out email or deploy out OneDrive or deploy out something and make those services available. And that's great, but that comes at the cost of security. Delaying security and not deploying it along with the services that creates a challenge. But also, a lot of times, we've also observed customers who are actually going and looking at third-party solutions to deploy on top of our platforms as well. And we'll touch on how that has implications in terms of your actual experience, your total cost of ownership, and also the implications from creating data silos and how that impacts your security posture as well. So the way we typically see things is a lot of the deployments happen where you get your user data, you deploy the workloads, you onboard and train the users, and then after everything is done, someone somewhere goes, "Oh, what about security?" So deprioritization of security really creates vulnerabilities, and we want to make sure that we drive home a point that do this along with your deployment. Don't think about this as an after the fact conversation, something that is in line with everything that has been done. And really the reason why we're talking about this is we see a lot of these security breaches happening across India, right? Some of the top global cyber attacks on education sectors are happening in India, which is unfortunate. So we really have an opportunity to think through the whole platform, its security stance, and what it means for your actual end digital transformation aspirations that we talked about at the beginning of the call as well. So we want to make sure we're making it difficult. We want to make sure that it becomes easy for you to create a security environment which looks at your internal threats, your network policies, your unmonitored suspicious activities, lateral movements, device risk, remote access, exploitation and installation, of course, phishing attacks and brute force and others. These are really core to how today's security environment has become a lot more complex compared to the old days of just having a virus or some kind of malware coming in and trying to attack, or some kind of a denial of service attack from external parties. Now these things are getting very, very sophisticated. So along with that, we need a whole system kind of a conversation around that. So we definitely think identity and access management and device security in depth has to be done along with all of your other application deployments. So your productivity apps, your platform apps like SharePoint, OneDrive, other things that you're introducing into your environment, we need you to think about security holistically along with it and not as an afterthought. So how do we do this? We've thought about this as a journey because we totally understand that it's going to be not easy for us to kind of just have one solution on one day and go, okay, you've now deployed something. We've broken this down into kind of 4 phases. Phase number 1, identity and threat protection, making sure that we know who you are, what you're coming in from. We're providing you single sign-on as much as possible, leveraging conditional access to know who you are, where you're coming in from, and what is the threat level of that particular device and user coming in from different networks. Being able to also manage the device to make sure that it is secured right out of the gate. Because a lot of times what we're seeing in education is a lot of the collaboration services have been deployed out there with very little thought given to the process for deployment of the device, of the apps, of the actual device management, and how this whole environment grows with you, and being able to protect your data on that particular device. So being able to understand what is sensitive information and what kind of compliance, retention, governance, and monitoring policies we need to look at. Content management and search capabilities that need to be put on top of this content. Because you want to only provide access to that information and that data that a particular user should have access to rather than wants to have access to. So there is the other aspect of the productivity, collaboration, information protection, and governance. But for the purpose of today's conversation and to kind of cut short on the PowerPoints today, we're going to focus in on all the blue points that we've got on this deck, which is basically identity and access. And we're going to have Shubham go through some of those demos for us. Identity access, single sign-on, conditional access, threat protection, self-service, which is autopilot and Intune, apps management, ensuring you how the deployment of apps can happen. And we're going to also specifically talk about what the device brings in the conversation about silicon to cloud, because it's not just enough to protect everything in the cloud. It is also just as important to make sure that from the silicon on the device through to its connections and its interaction with the cloud is all well secure. So we'll have Siddharth talk about the innovations that we are bringing in our first-party devices to enable a really enhanced management capability for our Surface line of devices as well. Of course, the other thing that I want to also kind of impress upon you here is that, yes, there are many solutions out there, and there are multiple vendors out there who are doing all of this and are providing various solutions in this modern workplace framework and journey. However, we fundamentally feel that having a platform that has been designed from the ground up and has the full integration from the ground up really changes your visibility, your control plane, your ability to manage, and therefore reduce risk, but also reduce your cost of doing and securing your environment. So what we are actually actively seeing out there and talking to a lot of customers, they are able to consolidate multiple of these vendors back into the Microsoft 365 secure, intelligent, and complete solution to empower your employees. That's really the aim of Microsoft 365, to bring together productivity and collaboration with Office, the upgraded capabilities of Windows education from a security perspective on the endpoint, and of course, the enterprise mobility and security capabilities of our EMS platform as well. So that's really how M365 brings together this whole platform into one, if you like, a licensing way of doing things, but also from a deployment and a adoption, and also the way that you manage it becomes a seamless experience for you as an IT pro. So with that in mind, I just want to make sure that we also provide you data points around where we are and the areas that we actually integrate, from identity and access, threat protection, unified endpoint management, data protection, and cloud security, all in that one secure security offering from Microsoft 365. And also, I mean, we don't want to go get into too much detail around this, but most of these categories, we are actually in the Gartner leader quadrant. And I'm happy to send you information on updated Gartner quadrants for each of these categories that we have as well. So we are very fortunate that we are being recognized in many of these quadrants. So let's think about all of the tools and mechanisms that we're going to be looking at today. For today's conversation, of course, each of these areas can be mapped to different tools within our Microsoft 365 a set of capabilities and services which are provided for you through the Microsoft 365 cloud. So from identity and access from Azure Active Directory to cloud app security to having Microsoft Defender for Office, cloud apps, and endpoint, through device management through Microsoft Endpoint Manager. All of these are products that come together into the holistic thing called Microsoft 365. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to get into the demos. So the intention of the next few minutes is to really capture the essence of each of these areas. And Shubham is going to take over from me, and we can have a conversation as we go through with Shubham as he shows us his demos. And if there are any questions while he's doing the demos, please feel free to have the conversation with us, because Siddharth and I will be monitoring the chat while Shubham is presenting. So over to you, Shubham. Thank you. Oh, but before you go, any questions before we kind of get into this?
Amit, I was thinking, cybersecurity was always on the back burner for even organizations and enterprises. And we have been through PCQuest, we have been around for 35 years. We have been pushing for the importance of cybersecurity. Many enterprises still don't realize. So educational institutes are new to the game. Maybe if you could just tell one thing why they have to. I mean, it's just not enough for a smart education, hybrid education, but also a secure education. Maybe quickly, if you can tell why it
No,
would help.
absolutely. I mean, it's paramount because, as I said, education is a soft target for a lot of these malicious actors. There is a lot of data to be. It's like a honeypot of data, right? Because you think about it, we've got student information. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of users' information. You've got their social security details. You've got sometimes you have health records. You have a lot of different records that are really worth mining for if you're a malicious actor. And of course, there's data, there is research work that happens in a lot of universities and higher education institutions that is obviously IP that belongs to the institution, and they want to protect that. So we don't see this as any different to, say, a company like Microsoft that needs to protect its own IP. In fact, a lot of the times the conversations we have with our customers also is based on our own experiences. I mean, we are one of the most attacked targets on the internet from a cybersecurity perspective. So we learn a lot from from what's happening inside the Microsoft environment, but also learn from what's happening to a lot of our customers, which enables us to bring a solution that really meets our customers' requirement. And specifically for education, in the past, I think the past 18 months, just after the video conferencing conversation that's been had, the security conversation is the second most often requested conversation with Microsoft, because we are seeing increased attacks. We've seen examples, not just in India, but I've seen examples in Singapore. I've seen examples in Southeast Asia, Japan, Australia, and many other customers who've in fact been impacted to a point where they've had a business impact where ransomware gets into their environment and their PCs are shut down, or their servers have been impacted, or data has been compromised that then gets leaked onto the internet. It creates security in that respect is a business critical aspect, not an optional add-on anymore, because your reputation is online, obviously your data information is online, your research IP is online, and many other aspects of what really goes into the operational side of a institution are also online. We've even seen facilities been impacted where lights at sports stadiums have been hacked and just for a prank or whatever else. But it starts with something very simple as that, but it gets really complex and really targeted. And it's not just malicious actors who are independent, but in some cases there are state actors behind this. So there is a lot of importance that we really think, we encourage all our education institutions to think through very carefully on this. And that's why I put up the slide earlier as well to say, don't think about this as delaying and not deploying it first. And yes, I'll get to it one day and it will happen and I'll add a little security here and add an antivirus there. I think those days are long gone. We need a holistic, as part of the education transformation framework, we want you to also have a really strong guidance around and a policy around your security, your compliance, your data management, your data hierarchy. There's so much to it, to be honest. We're not going to be able to cover all of it. And what we also, and one thing that Shubham is going to talk about is that because we don't have a holistic strategy around a lot of these things, we end up having shadow IT. So, I found an app, I'll go and install it. And I found an app that my friend is using at some other university. Maybe it's good enough for me as well. What we see there is that this viral adoption creates data silos, creates other vectors of attack that is just not going to give you, and not having visibility into all of these different vectors of attack into your environment really does create a lot of, points of vulnerability for your environment. So I think we really need to think through that whole strategy end to end. Hope that addresses what you're saying there, Sunil.
Yeah, Amit, thanks. I mean, it's quite important, and I'm happy you said it. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, so, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I said we can Shubham or whatever. We can go forward.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so let's get into the demos, and as you see the demos, you'll also see the importance of individual aspects of that journey, and we'll keep referring back to that slide. So Shubham, if you don't mind, if you go back one slide.
Sure.
Sorry, before this slide. Yeah. So we will keep referring back to this slide. Okay, and this is what is actually going to guide the rest of the demo. You will see different parts of this journey, and we've deliberately made this into a journey because we don't see very many institutions applying and doing all of this in one go. It's actually quite difficult to do in one go. It's more of a small piece by piece kind of an approach, and having that holistic security posture organized in a journey that you know where you're going to be focused on is really important. And it reminded me I need to cover the initial identity and access. So Shubham, if you click to the next slide after your demo slide. Yeah, I'll cover this particular one because what I'm trying to do with this particular slide is to impress upon you the importance of having a good known quantity of your end users, your classes, your schools, your different groups within your environment. Because digital identity, as we talked about at the beginning of this session, is foundational to all the services that we're going to enable. And if I don't know who you are as a student, as a teacher, or as other faculty members or other administrators or stakeholders inside your environment, I need to know who you are, where you are fitted in from a rostering perspective, like classes, class rosters. If there is multiple schools and the schools have their own rosters, then we need to consider those. That is data that typically comes in from the SIS. And that SIS data can be taken in using what we call the school data sync. Because otherwise, we end up doing things manually. We want to get away from creating users manually, deleting users manually, progressing them from one year to the next or one subject to the next manually. So what we ended up doing was created in the cloud a free service that enables you to use your SIS data, your authoritative data to actually synchronize that and go and create your teams, your groups, your OneNotes, your Microsoft Intune groups for management, your Office 365 security groups, distribution groups, all using the free service in the cloud. It has been done deliberately to make sure that we are powering an education aware platform, because there are certain nuances around the education, the way things get deployed using the one roster API or the one roster CSV file system is what we use. And that CSV file system basically allows us to look at the relationship between a student, a faculty, their classes, their class rosters, and school rosters. And all of that comes together into a nice little mesh because there is a multi-dimensional relationship between each of these objects. So we do create that for you automatically once we have that data coming in from your student information system. And I would love to show you a demo, but it is quite a long demo. So I won't do the demo today, but I just want you all to be aware of this because everything else we're going to talk about today is actually anchored on the fact that you have got the right digital identity ecosystem set up. Because once I know who you are, and then I know which device you're coming in from, all the things Shubham's going to show us is going to be possible for us to apply policies at the user level or at the device level. I hope that is clear. If there's any questions on that, happy to kind of talk about SDS in a little bit more detail as required. But I'll hand it over to Shubham now. But in the meantime, I'll also link out to anybody who wants to read on SDS a little bit more. Thanks, Shubham.
Yeah. So shall we start here?
Yeah,
The
go for it.
demos.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think what Amit, you mentioned around the holistic approach, that's what we target, in this demo. So we'll start with the identity management and protection. We'll move towards how we will then protect from identity to data, and then to cloud applications and towards the endpoint. So the idea here is how you are protecting all these different digital estates to achieve the holistic zero trust model that we all aspire for. Okay, so we'll start with conditional access and multi-factor authentication here. Now, towards the start of every demos, I'll call out for some of the use cases, show you the demo. Of course, if you at any time feel that you may have some different use cases, feel free to just raise it. We can talk about it and see how Azure and Microsoft 365 ecosystem of security can really help. Okay, so let's get started. Now, conditional access. The name implies itself. There is a condition, right? There's access. So based on certain conditions, you either allow an access, you block an access, or you allow the access but with certain conditions. So I'll show you one quick demonstration over here. So there would be a lot of transitions. So just be mindful of what's happening on the screen so don't miss out on anything. So what I'm typically trying to do here is I am trying to access Microsoft Teams. Now, don't just consider Teams as just an application, right? You may have Outlook, you may have your own application or any application for that matter, right? Now think about like this. You want to restrict the access of an application from uh, outside India. Maybe because you do not have any students who are enrolled outside India, right? So if there is any request coming outside the India, there are high chances that it is possibly an attack, right? Or maybe your students or anybody from your organization is using a VPN, which is obviously it's not a sanctioned application, right? So you want to block accesses from requests which are coming from perhaps not India, right? Outside India. So let's see how that really works. So what I'll do is I'll just copy my identity here. Just give me a moment. This is my identity, Pradeep. Now it's asking me for my password. Okay. So I want you to just read this message. It says your sign-in is successful. However, you do not meet the criteria to access this resource. Now, since I am currently in India, of course, this request is not coming from outside the India, and that's where the rule that I have made, or the conditional access rule that I have made here is, if the request is coming from India, block it, right, for the sake of the demo. But of course, it is not just restricted to country. Maybe you want to allow access only from certain region, from certain set of IPs, right? All these facilities are available. We'll just explore how the conditional access policy dashboard looks like, right? Now, one more scenario. Now, think about like this. I want to allow access of application from outside India, but I want to enforce MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. I don't want to just simply rely on passwords, right? Passwords can get compromised. I want to enforce multi-factor authentication. Also, I want to ensure that the request is coming from a device which is compliant, which is onboarded to my Azure, which is onboarded to my Intune. Now, let's see how that experience would look like. Now I'm using the same identity, Pradeep, here. Now, yeah, now I'll just use the same identity. And this time around, I should get the login successfully because I have blocked Teams, but I haven't blocked Outlook, right? So you see something called, there's a text message which will go to your mobile. So I'll just take that and let's see. Okay, I've received the code. All right. So as you can see, again, the conditional policy says if you're coming outside a particular geolocation, I want to enforce MFA because I want to explicitly verify who you are. And also, interesting, you see this access to Microsoft Exchange Online is monitored. So this is something that we'll talk about when we talk about shadow IT discovery. But just to give you an idea, what this uh, capability is, there's a broker, there's an agent which is sitting between your end user and your cloud application. And this trusted agent can tell you that, okay, this student of this class is actually not using an application which has a good security posture, right? All of this. So we'll see that when we talk about Defender for cloud apps. And FYI, this machine that I'm accessing this for, is actually joined to my Azure. So the condition that I've mentioned that, okay, you want to enforce MFA, do it, but also ensure that it is coming from, I know, the accounts which are joined to Azure. So at the end of the day, I have access and control towards all these parameters. So let me also show you some of the conditional access policy that I made. So if you see here, this is what I made this morning, and let's see how that policy looks like. Okay. Feel free to interrupt me. This is a really interesting topic. Conditional access can really be a big, breather for you if you do not have time to monitor things. Perhaps what you can do as a proactive treatment, proactive measure is to just decide the condition which are compliant to you, and just push these policies. So what you see here is I have the name of the policy. I can decide uh, whether to push this policy for a user, for a group of a user, or maybe to the entire organization. In this case, I have selected only one application, which was Microsoft Teams. However, you can have entire application, and for your information, not necessary that you should only have Microsoft application. For example, if you have integrated your own application, maybe an ERP, right? You may be using an ERP system to manage your entire day-to-day or streamline right from management admission to alumni, right? But perhaps that ERP doesn't have capabilities which Azure AD can really facilitate. For example, conditional access policy, right? So you can also control the access of the third-party applications as well, right? Now, the condition that I have selected here is I'll show you the locations. So I have included India and Africa, right? So any access which is coming from India or Africa, I'm not giving them the access. So this is a very simple scenario. However, if I wanted to grant access with certain restrictions or certain, you know, um, condition, I can enforce MFA. It should happen that the request is coming from a compliant Azure AD required, compliant device. Otherwise, I don't want to give the access. So conditional access can be really helpful in this perspective. Now, before I move towards PIM, which is a privileged identity management, any questions? Would love to answer that.
Shubham, I just put up a link on the side as well that talks to the fact that if you want to get started with the education, from a security stance perspective, MFA is super critical, right? Because studies have shown that if you just enable MFA, you're now protecting against 99.9% of attacks against your account compromise attacks, right?
Absolutely. No,
I just wanted
I
to see.
completely agree to this.
Yeah.
And good thing is you don't have to maintain any radius servers like old times. We used to have those radius servers, and SMS is not going through, your business is down. With Azure AD, everything is cloud managed. You don't have to worry about whether there will be any SMS outage or anything of that nature. So this is really cool, not only in terms of reducing the attack, but also in terms of managing the things.
Yeah, because it is super critical, and is also one of the ways that we are going to get into other conversation around passwordless and Windows Hello and things as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah, perfect. Thanks, Shubham. Any questions, Sunil? Anything from your side?
Yeah, I'm fine because I'm sure a lot of people must be thinking what I'm thinking. Like we are so used to online anonymity on our social media and all, but you don't do that in office. And I mean, the process you're saying is very important. That you have to establish the identity. I mean, in an education system, you have to know like who's the principal, who's the student, who's the teacher. That is all. That also goes towards security. So I mean, usually we don't think on those lines. So that was like one big takeaway for me.
Good, because yeah, sorry, go ahead, Shubham.
I just happen to recall a proverb which says security is myth if you have limited visibility.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that sums it up.
I
Correct.
mean, there are only two kinds of users, right, Sunil? The
Yeah,
ones that know that they've been attacked, and the ones that don't know that they've been attacked yet.
yeah, agreed. Correct.
Because the assumption is you are under attack. The
Yeah,
assumption is zero trust, because the
yeah,
fact is that there is no concept of a internal network and an external network and the internet and intranet and this DMZs, and those days are gone, because I think now, because so much of our services are already in the cloud, we are so dependent on cloud services. Knowing who you are, knowing what device you're coming from, and then putting in the policies as Shubham just explained, with conditional access and with MFA and other requirements, really changes the ball game, because it's all happening in the cloud. The control plane is the security plane.
Yeah. No, I think, that is a good slogan for this, your security, because 100% devices and 100% people are attacked. You may know, you may not know, you may suffer, you may not suffer. But the attempted attack is 100%, I'd say. Everyone is attacked.
Yes, there's only two types. Yeah, you either know it or you don't know it.
Correct. So, thanks. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Sunil.
Yeah. So let's march ahead. Now, I want you to think of a scenario. Okay. Now, let's say you want to give some privileged access to one of the teacher or one of the faculty members or even students for that matter, but you don't want to give it for all the time, right? Maybe today is a function, there is some privileged identity access that I want to give to a particular teacher, but I want to revoke it as soon as the function is over, right? Because at the end of the day, towards if you want to achieve that zero trust model, you have to have identities with minimal privilege, right? So that's where features like privilege identity management can really help. Now I'll show you that in a moment. So I'm trying to access, let's say, admin.microsoft.com. Now, usually admin.microsoft.com is only accessed by the administrators because this is a superpower. As an administrator, you can do a lot of things. You can delete data. You can, wipe off literally everything, right? Now, what you see in front of your screen is it says Shubham doesn't have the access permission. Now, let's say for an event, Shubham needs some sort of access, right? Now, how do you do that? So I'll just go and give myself an access, and you'll see how that process would look like. Right. So this is a feature called privilege identity management, right? And I'm giving myself the role of global administrator, trying to activate that role rather. Okay. So let's see how that experience would look like. But before I can, give the access, it says additional verification required. So let's see what is the verification this guy needs. Okay, this is asking for an MFA. So MFA is everywhere. I cannot shy away from it already. So let me enter it. I'll just quickly verify.
I'm going to applause every time you say the word MFA.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's
what
really
a drinking game.
Yeah, it is a bit of a drinking game, Sunil.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shubham. Anyway.
Let's see, Sunil, if you get them more than I do. Whenever it says MFA, we applaud.
Okay.
So it says, it tells me, okay, what is the time for which you want to get this access for? So let me give it in 8 hours. So for 8 hours, I'll be the admin of this particular tenant, right? I want to give a reason. Maybe there is a session or any demonstration or anything of that nature, right? I want to give that reason and I'll just activate it. Usually there are 3 validation steps. What will happen is the request will go to my, let's say, principal or somebody who's a senior administrator. For the purpose of demo, I have skipped it, but otherwise what will happen is there will be a notification and you can approve or disapprove that right from your Microsoft Teams application. And within the stages, what you will see here is I'll get that authentication or rather the privilege. And let's see if I'm then able to access this admin center or not, which currently I'm not able to. Okay, so right now the access has been enabled. So let me try to either refresh it or probably I'll have to sign out and sign in again because when it received the tokens, it was the permissions were not there. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll now sign in again.
While you're logging in, Shubham, just to confirm that this is applicable to any application that has SSO capability with Azure Active Directory.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's
So
another
whatever that I
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so just adding on to what you said, whatever capability that we are showing, if you are using Azure AD as your identity provider, or as I mentioned, if, whether it is your ERP or any damn application that you're using, right? All these capabilities can be light up very seamlessly.
Yeah. So it comes down to the SSO conversation in our journey as well.
We'll show that as well.
Yeah.
Superb. So earlier, if you noticed, the admin site was not working. Now let's see if it is working now or not. Amazing. Now what you see is for next 8 hours, I have been given this access. Once those 8 hours are done, and I think this is something that if it were a manual process, I'm sure 8 out of 10 times you will forget to revoke the access. And today in a lot of organization, I think Amit, you would agree. I see this a lot of times. Many identities have unnecessary permissions, and what if those identity get compromised? Right, there would be a lateral kill chain, and I don't know what not. So things like PIM can really make your task easier and automated.
So just to give you a very live example, Shubham, I've got 20 schools in a country, and I won't name which country, who've just been compromised in the last week, and their admin passwords been changed because they forgot to actually revoke exactly what you just said. The elevated privileges were given to user who then left the organization, and they forgot to actually take in and revoke those requirements around that elevated privilege. Now having this privilege access management would have prevented that, and now they're in a position where they're going to have to go call up this ex-employee, and the ex-employee is being very difficult with actually giving them the root password or the admin password back.
Yeah.
So it's more of a managing social as well as technical security requirements here, because at the end of the day we do need to trust our admins as well, but having a system that also enables us to manage privileged access is super important.
You also talked about passwords, right? That there are certain, like for example, India @123. It's very famous in India. Like everybody uses it. But can you rely on Azure AD to proactively go ahead and tell you, hey, boss, don't use it?
Yeah,
It
of
will not
course.
even take milliseconds for the attackers to crack this up. So we'll also showcase this when we talk about SSPR as to how Azure AD can tell you that don't use some of the frequently, access or rather used passwords, because we take intelligence from even darknets, right? So we have the repository of frequently used passwords. So all of these can really sort of come handy. Now we'll move towards SSO. Now SSO is something we need to understand what it is actually. So think of a scenario that you are using 10 different applications, right? One is of course Microsoft. So within Microsoft, you have Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, and whatnot. Of course, we use one single identity to access all of these applications. But let's say you have other applications, another 9 applications, and you have to use 9 different usernames and password, right? Mm, the identities, the number of identity, the digital identity in this case would increase. Although I'm just one person, but I have 9 different user accounts. Now think of a scenario where you can have single username and single password to actually access all your application, because you're reducing the threat vector here. You be out of which otherwise you would have, let's say, 10 different identities. Now you only have one identity. Number one. Number two, perhaps your application, let's say you're using a business application which works wonder for your organization, for your university, right? Any ERP, any gamification application, but they are not specialized in security, right? They are not to a standard where Azure AD is. So We just saw how multi-factor authentication, how cloud access security, how conditional access can be leveraged. Now, what if your application can actually redirect while you're login? You can redirect to Azure AD. So Azure AD will act as a gatekeeper, do all the authentication and authorization, and give the allow the access, right? So that's where the demo that I'm going to show here is. There's an application called ServiceNow. Now, ServiceNow, for your information, I think most of us are already aware of what ServiceNow is. ServiceNow is widely used application for ITSM, right? Infrastructure information technology, service management, HR management, and whatnot. So just have a quick look as to what is happening here. Now, I have logged in using my Microsoft credential, and it will use my Microsoft credential and will take me to, let's say, ServiceNow. So if you closely look at the URL, yeah, let's see what happens here. The redirection is taking place automatically. There's a trust between ServiceNow and Azure AD that is already there in place. And right now, I have been from Microsoft Identity, from Azure AD Identity. I am now logged in to a separate third-party application. And also, it accentuates my experience because I don't have to, enter my username and password 10 times in a day. I can be at a single console. I can just simply log into my Windows device and get things started, right? So there are, as I speak, there are more than I think almost 5,000 connectors which are already inbuilt. But if you have your own custom application, you can also leverage that as well. So let me just show you how that also works. So this is my Azure Active Directory. And I'll show you how that the integration has been done. So if you go here, there's an option called Enterprise Application.
And just to be clear, Shubham, these are all standards-based authentication protocols, right?
Yeah.
So just if there is any concern about, is this a Microsoft-specific protocol technology?
No, this is OAuth 2.0, as you correctly mentioned, and it's an industry-wide accepted technology. It's not something that we have in Microsoft particular. So don't worry. It's like you talk about Google, you talk about Facebook, and every other Okta or other identity providers is the same platform that we use as yeah. So it uses the same OAuth protocol. Yeah. So you see that I have created a lot of different SSO integrations. Some of them are expired. I use it for my demo purposes, and some of them are currently used. So if I tell you the service now, I don't what happening. Okay. Or maybe I typoed something. Looks like there's an my keypad is malfunctioning. Okay. So you just witnessed the SSO part of it. Now before we go
Sorry,
ahead,
Shubham, if you click on the new registration, you might be able to see all the apps that are available, right?
yeah, so we see that here. Just a sec. Just a sec.
There's nothing like a demo in real.
No, so I'll tell you. For some reason it goes to a new. So if you see here, just a sec. Enterprise application. So
There
we
it
have
is.
this gallery. So there's a list of, as I told you, that we have more than 5,000 different applications, and if your application happen to be from one of the leading OEMs, you will find them here itself. So the integration becomes even more seamless to do. But having said that, we also give different SDKs and APIs. So even if and let's say your vendor is a local vendor, Still it's a possibility. It's just that you have to do some bit of heavy lifting in terms of getting the APIs onboarded to your application and redirect the request to Azure AD. That's it. Yeah. So
We're getting prodded for some time here as well, Shubham. So let's keep it moving.
Okay. So now let's just go and have a look on the capabilities of SSPR. Simple use cases would be, let's say your end user's password is expired, right? But what has happened is uh, passwords have been expired. Now every time you have to make calls to your IT guy saying, hey, can you just reset my password? And if the IT guy is not present, right, probably you won't be productive until the time is there. So let's see how that self-service password reset works. So there's a link called aka.ms slash SSPR. SSPR basically stands for self-service password reset. And I want to, let's say I have an identity here and I'll just go and reset the password and let's see how that experience would look like. Right. Okay. I don't know. And 4. Okay. Hope that's correct.
Looks all right.
Yeah. Now, usually you would, question that, hey, if anybody can reset my password. No, nobody can. Actually, you have to enter it. You have to explicitly verify your mobile number. So, if in case somebody has your mobile, then this could be trickier. But otherwise, usually you don't give your mobile these days to anyone. So you're pretty safe with that respect. So let me just enter the MFA once again. So you have to upload FII, Amit. Okay, let's see. Unless I've entered it in. Okay, I've just received it. 60247. Okay. So now the option that I'll get here is to enter the new password. Now let me see. I have if I want to use India at the rate 123, right? Um, it says strong. Let's see if it allows me or not. All right. So you see that it says, unfortunately, your password contains a word or a phrase with a pattern which is easily guessable, right? If you see this, this is the message that it says.
Shubham, why can't everything have this? All your Facebook, Twitter,
That's because
everything.
that's because this is using all of the intelligence and the threat signals. There are
Oh,
billions, trillions of threat signals we look at every day,
oh my
and
God.
this gets better every day. This is not
I
something
see.
that's static.
It's dynamic, you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not like we've hard coded India at 123 in here. It is
Right.
based on signals that we are getting from the dark net and other things as well. So
Okay.
Absolutely.
there's a lot of intelligence going into what seems to be a very simple interface, but
Yeah.
behind it there's a lot of magic happening.
Okay. Great.
I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't got into the back end of all of this, right? We're purely
Obviously,
showing the
yeah.
end user experiences so that people on the call really get a feel for how capable this platform really is. And
Right.
truly is, a case of there used to be this concept, Sunil, in the 90s and early 2000s where everybody was looking for best of breed. Now we
Right.
are looking for best of platform, which is also
Okay.
happens to be best of breed, right? The
Okay.
platforms that you're investing in, whether it's a Microsoft or a Google or SAP or ServiceNow and so many other platforms, the attack vectors are so sophisticated now
Yeah,
that you
definitely.
do truly need a security, I suppose, a solution that is all encompassing.
Yeah.
It needs to look at so many different threat angles.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what will happen when quantum computing comes.
Exactly. Well, that's another problem because that's when we really truly need to get to passwordless.
Yeah, I know. True.
And
Yeah.
I'll use my favorite word, MFA, and apply it for myself.
Okay.
Is the answer to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Sorry, Shubham, for disturbing you non-stop. You can continue.
No, that's okay. I mean, we really want to get into the interactive as much as we can.
But we're also running short on time, man.
Yeah.
And
So yeah,
I know
just
Siddharth's waiting very
one.
patiently there to give us a conversation around device management.
Yeah. So I'll just try to reset this
I have
and
Parimal also. I think Parimal was also, Parimal Deshpande. He was also there, Cloudstrats. So
Yes. Parimal's after that. So
yeah.
that's
So anyway, it doesn't matter.
even more important that we stick to time because
sure.
it's not just the Microsoft
so maybe
short
I'll
term, we
try to
also have our partner.
cover them in 5-10 minutes. Okay.
But hope this is interesting and valid and relevant for everyone who's on the call. I hope so. Please give us a thumbs up or something so that we know that we're doing a reasonable job with this. So if you have a reaction, just give us a reaction. If you like it or
I think Amit, the problem is you sorted out all the queries in your first workshop. So no, nobody has any queries anymore. It looks like that.
no.
Okay.
We're not getting any questions today. Last time we got so many.
I know that's what I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it's like people are.
I mean, it is a heavy topic. I do agree, but at
Yeah,
this,
maybe like we have gone more in depth this time. So
this is it is getting pretty. But what we're trying to impress here is that this is core. This is critical to
right.
provide this. Everybody talks about getting to the hybrid teaching and learning, but as I showed in my diagram before, foundational services, they're not sexy by any means,
Yeah, I
but
know.
they're necessary.
Very essential. True.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get started with some of the use cases that I have, and then I'll hand it over to uh, Siddharth. Okay. So phishing attack I think we got into more complicated stuff. So I just wanted to get into phishing attack. Very common, right? You go to a website, it looks like it's genuine. You end up leaking your credentials. Now that's where a Defender for Office, it has something called smart links and smart URLs, or rather smart attachments, or rather safe attachments, right? What it will do is the moment you will receive any email, any document, any as Teams chat for that matter, which has an URL, automatically the defender will go ahead and will do a proactive check, will open up and spin up a separate detonating chamber in Azure, and actually it'll try to open the site and see if there is any anomaly, right? And the reason why I'm laying emphasis on this point is because a lot of people would argue that, hey, what if this phishing attack URL is new? It is just been launched 2 minutes ago, and your anti-malware, antivirus system doesn't has not even identified it. Because we get these questions a lot. Now that's where 0-day protection really comes into picture, because it opens every damn attachment or URL that you receive within your organization, and will look when it tries to open it, it will see if there is any backdoor attack, if there is any payload real time, and will try to block it. So what you see in front of your screen is I have received this email, and there is a phishing URL, and there's something called there's a legitimate URL as well. So the moment if I try to open this up, you will see something called safe link. If you see here, it says safe link, dot outlook dot protection. Again, there's something called MCAS. So what it has done is, there's an architecture. I'll not go into the architecture. It's a reverse proxy architecture. It goes and checks for the reputation. If it has a bad reputation, it'll get blocked real time, or otherwise it opens a separate chamber and try to see if this is okay or not, right? So this is one example. Of course, if you have received a website with a good reputation, that will work very easily, right? Also, I have this document which is a malware. So let me try to send this to one of my colleagues and see what happens in this case, right? If it opens up, or what is the behavior, so on and so forth. So I'll just forward this to one of my administrators here, and let's see. And this litware is basically a malware stuff. So I'll just send this up. I'll just navigate back. The problem of having so many tabs is sometimes you tend to lose. I think this is the one. Okay. This is the ID where I have just received that malware. Let's see how Outlook is helping me protect this. Now, this is equally true for Teams. This is equally true for you if you're leveraging, other applications in terms of Azure AD. So this is equally true for anywhere. So if you see here, see what is that we have received. It says malware alert, right? If you see this, it says malware alert. So all of these accesses will be blocked there and then itself. Um, One was this, another very important, I think I'll just go back and reflect on the identity protection on our slide, right? So let me just quickly do that. So this would be very interesting. We talked about something called sensitive information, right? Now, at times you have access to study materials which you don't want students to forward it to somebody who is not enrolled on the course. So this is just one use case. That could be many, right? There are certain IPs as Amit mentioned. Now you don't want people to actually forward it to somebody, right? Now using sensitivity labels, you can actually control the entire lifestyle of a document. In this demo, I'll show you how that is getting stopped from Outlook. But again, even if it is in a Teams chat, even if it's in your desktop or anywhere within your digital estate, um, the control will be still there, right? So let me show you that example as well. So I'll just okay. Now, if you see this document, this is a confidential document, and this document actually contains a lot of sensitive information. This could be a classic manifestation of data loss prevention or any data exfiltration for that matter. If you see there are credit card numbers, there are bank accounts, so on and so forth. What I have done here is while I am forwarding this file, it has something called high confidential project sensitivity label. If you see this, right? Now, let me try to forward this email to one of my Gmail accounts. Very simple use case, right? Now, even for example, this is an email that I'm triggering, right? But if I'm trying to copy and paste it to a USB stick, again, this will get blocked. Let's see how that experience looks like. So right away, I have received this non-deliverable saying you do not have permission to give others access to this file, right? Now, this is really important to very, very important use case if you want to restrict and have the governance over the, the documents and the data that you have. Amit, just a quick time check. If we have time, I'm good for shadow IT discovery. Otherwise, I can hand it over to
No, I
Siddharth
think we
for our
yeah,
story.
let's probably skip that for now. It's, if that's
Sure.
okay, Sunil, in interest of time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
true.
but there is a capability that also enables us to look at all the shadow IT, and we can talk about it separately on a different call. But
Sure,
let's hand it over to Siddharth to talk about how we do device management and the capabilities from silicon to cloud.
sure.
Thanks, Siddharth.
Thanks, Amit. Finally, I think I can talk about devices. Just give me a minute before I bring up the slides. Not too many, so for sure will not take a lot of time, but just give me a second, please. Let me know
Appreciate it.
once it's
Yeah, it
visible.
is there. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah. So essentially, I think Amit and Shubham have covered a lot about security, and of course, all of it is sort of cloud-powered security. But then again, like Amit pointed out in the beginning, devices should not really be treated as a commodity, especially in the current circumstances where we are looking at virtual learning or a hybrid learning model to continue. Right, faculty might be in person in the institute, or the university students might be doing a hybrid nature of study right now. So therefore, there could be a BYOD, there could be a institute sort of procured devices. So essentially, security should continue to be looked at very proactively, even on devices, right? And we have had instances in the past, may not be in India but elsewhere, where there have been ransomware attacks on the IT network. Devices have been compromised, there have been lawsuits filed for inappropriate use of the devices and some of the firmware as well. So in a sense, I think it's important to look at security even at a silicon level, at a chip level on the device, and just see how that sort of scales up to the cloud, right? And that's where Surface devices are in a way designed to provide that kind of security, which includes guarding against firmware attacks and data being stolen, right? And that's basically because when Surface is built, it's built from ground up because that offers the best of Microsoft, right from cloud security to the device security. And not just that, it's even kept up to date to ensure that you're protected for the lifetime of the device, right? And therefore, when we really look at the entire cycle, we make sure that the hardware, the firmware, the drivers, and the operating system undergo through security design inspection before they're actually shipped, right? And therefore, after that, during the life cycle, using the Windows update, we make sure that they all are up to date against any new and emerging threats with that we just sort of discussed. Now, our cloud managed DFCI, which is device firmware configuration interface, is really the key differentiator here, which makes Surface stand apart from devices available otherwise in the market, which essentially gives comfort that the devices can be managed at an institute level or for the students in today's world where all of them or most of them could be working remotely, right? So when we really talk about DFCI, we'll sort of look at a short video as well. We're basically talking about locking in the firmware, locking in the settings at the firmware level to ensure that that gives an added layer of security on top of the OS-led security protection that can be established via MDM. So that's something which is exclusive to Surface, and we'll talk about this. But of course, in addition to DFCI, there are other elements on Surface which some of them are standard with some of our Windows OEM partners, such as the TPM, right? That protects the hardware from being tampered with. So it quickly and very easily encrypts the data, enables access only by authorized individuals, much like what Shubham was pointing out from the cloud, with a physical, discrete, trusted platform module chip on the Surface devices, right? And similarly, there is Microsoft designed and managed, developed and managed UEFI, which is Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, which earlier used to be BIOS, right? So protecting the firmware from malicious attacks, right at that level, it's maintained by Microsoft, and therefore, from the time the power button is sort of pressed to the time that the operating system boots, organizations and institutes can avoid a critical vulnerability point and be assured that the latest UEFI updates are also being pushed out. So that's something which is there on all the Surface devices and sort of again exclusive to Microsoft from a UEFI level. Now, just moving forward, I think this is where I was just talking about DFSI, right? That's where the differentiation really comes in, which is basically saying that the IT admins now have the flexibility to configure and manage firmware through a set of UEFI configuration settings, and this provides a layer of hardware control on top of software-based policy management implemented via MDM policies. Right now, in a scenario where, for example, in an institute, you want to, for example, disable Bluetooth, right? And not just via MDM, but you want to disable that at a hardware level, at a firmware level, right? So that's something which is possible through DFCI via cloud. Gone are the days when each of those devices had to be inspected physically in person. It can all be managed by creating a new profile. DFCI is nothing but a new profile that can be created and pushed out via cloud, and that is once the devices are registered with autopilot, and then this can be rolled out via Intune. So that's something which is possible, right, to avoid some of these things at the firmware level, which could be Bluetooth. It could be, for example, disabling the camera in some instances, so that even a local admin cannot really go ahead and sort of enable this. So all of this is possible using DFCI. These are profiles that are built into Microsoft Intune, and Surface UEFI management sort of extends the entire modern management stack down at a hardware level, right? So it essentially eliminates the need for manual interaction by IT admins. It is deployed using autopilot and the device profiles capability built into Intune, right? So it's nothing, like I said, but additional profile that enables you to manage the UEFI settings from the cloud without having to maintain an on-premise infrastructure. Even in cases of an on-premise infrastructure, there is a Surface Enterprise Management mode, which again, of course, as the name suggests, is exclusive to Surface, which uses a 2-digit certification key, and you can still sort of manage those settings locally on premise with the Surface Enterprise Management mode. But we've seen a lot of these institutes and schools moving to cloud, and therefore looking at DFCA as a key component of managing aspects like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cameras, USB ports, not giving access to USB ports, blocking them at a firmware level, also blocking any boot from a USB stick, right? So all of those things can now be managed using DFC on Surface, thereby making sure that one, security is not compromised. Second, also in terms of the time and effort that the IT teams really need to invest in is also saved a lot, right? So that really, when we really look at the tangible aspect of it, given the number of devices that need to be deployed at scale in an organization across faculty and students, that they run into sort of thousands for large scale universities. If you look at about 20, 25 minutes at least being saved on deploying or managing these settings on each device, you're easily looking at hours of time being saved at an IT from an IT point of view, right? That of course can further be looked at in terms of cost savings as well. So all of these things are possible, and they come with Surface, and therefore when we started talking about these devices giving security from silicon to the cloud, that's essentially what we really meant. And before I sort of pass it over to the next section, I think I'll just play this small 2-minute video that really talks about DFSI. If you could just give me a second, I'll just switch the networks and play this. Just give me a second. Yeah, I just hope it has come up again.
Yes.
Sure.
Let us walk you through some settings around device protection and the device security. Security flaws like Meltdown and Spectre occurred at the chip level, allowing attackers to access data previously considered protected. The Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, commonly known as UFI on Surface devices, is developed and maintained proactively by Microsoft so that from the time the power button is pressed to the time that you boot into the operating system, you can avoid critical vulnerability. So that from the time the power button is pressed to the time that you boot into the operating system, you can avoid critical vulnerability. And be assured that the latest UFI updates are pushed automatically to your organization through Windows Update for Business. Also, Surface is the only manufacturer to have device firmware configuration interface, or what's commonly known as the FCI. The FCI is a set of policies and a set of management capabilities that will allow you to push configuration over the air, leveraging Microsoft Endpoint Manager down to the firmware. So with DFCI, what you can do as an example is to turn off device cameras or network or Bluetooth in, as an example, a hyper-secure location. So DFCI and Microsoft Endpoint Manager make it very simple to secure your Surface devices. And that's, again, a unique Surface capability. Yeah, so let us show you how a DFCI policy is configured. So you create that through the same principles we showed you earlier, and you find that under the configuration profiles. This is how a DFCI policy looks like as we speak. As you can see, you can enable different hardware settings, you can disable them. In the example we are showing you, we are disabling the cameras, and we are also disabling the boot from external media, such as USB and SD cards. With Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Windows Update for Business, your Surface devices are always being updated, which keeps those devices protected and helps you increase the security posture of your organization.
Yeah, so I think that was a small video which I just wanted to showcase for DFCI. And I think with that brings me to the end of a small capsule. Of course, there is a lot more to talk about Surface, but essentially just wanted to pivot around security for the session today. And please feel free to sort of put your question in the chat window. We're still here. Probably will leave us a few minutes in the end for Q&A. But yeah, over to Cloudstrats for the next part of the session. Or Amit, in case you have any quick inputs.
No, this is great. I think this just firmly talks to the whole silicon to cloud conversation that we had earlier as well. So thanks for doing that. I think that brings us to the end of our section, right? If there is opportunity for us to have a Q&A, I think we should respect Parimal's time as well and hand it over to him.
Yeah, let's hear from Parimal, and then maybe we can take joint questions. The
Yeah,
questions have
absolutely.
started coming in.
Yeah,
So
good.
there's Parimal Deshpande, Vice President Cloudstrats, and he'll talk about harnessing data for management. Over to you, Parimal.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Parimal Deshpande. I represent a company called Cloudstrats, and we would be talking more on how data or Power BI has been a game changer in terms of helping education institutions and everyone look at the same data that they have been looking at for ages with a different perspective altogether. When we talk about the data, it's more toward on having it's more toward on having the complete data set been available in a very isolated format. And that isolation has been causing a concern to all the various institutions that are governing this data. All the data is available in isolation and there is no central mechanism. To mitigate this gap, we have developed this integrated command and control center for especially for education. Now, this I will be showcasing some live demo of the report that or the tool that we have created. And this particular command center will be more towards on bringing all the necessary factors that actually help operate the education platform completely. So it collates all the information from various sources. Like let's take an example for an let's say education board. We have done this project for Delhi education and Gujarat education, wherein both these education boards have various schools and districts that are covering all these schools and institutions across the state. But they do not get to talk to each other, or the central team, that is the education board, does not have a complete insight on how things are being managed at the ground level. Now, to bring all these things on one platform, we have developed this particular tool using Power BI, this Microsoft Power BI, which integrates a lot of things together to bring everything as a central place to look at for the team managing the command and control center. So it captures all the various learning apps that have been prevailing, that is Gshala, Diksha. Then there is a new WhatsApp learning platform that has also been developed. So information that is coming from these institutions as well as these education platforms. Then attendance of the students is something that has been reserved only up to the school level. So even that is getting captured. The teachers' attendance, which goes up to school level, and later on when in a 3-4 months it goes to the board, that is also can be captured on a real-time basis. Then there are a few other things that are getting captured on a real-time basis: is vehicle tracking system, the students report card, the field visitors, the education officers who visit the various schools to see how the school is performing, and other projects that have been executed or allocated to them been executed in the right fashion or not. Then there is a lot of monitoring that happens related to the funds and assessment that can be brought onto this particular assessment. And then there is, last but not the least, there is central help desk as well that caters to all the necessities that come across as a challenge or suggestion to the help desk coming from the students, the faculty, and the parents of the students. Grievance redressal solution is also a next step to the help desk, wherein grievances can be addressed and it can reach, can be sent to the right set of people. And it also captures sentiment analysis coming from the various uh, stakeholders that can be pulled down to ensure that the education system works in a very efficient manner. Now, this was a brief overview that we have designed about the solution. Let me just share my screen to give you a quick overview about the report that we have developed. I'm sharing my screen now. One moment. Let me know once you see the screen, please.
Yeah, visible.
Okay, so this is the report that we had created, or this is the application that we have created for the Gujarat Education Board. This is a dashboard that you see. It talks about all the necessary things. What it captures is all the things that we spoke about, the geotagging of the lat long of the school, And then it also captures how the bifurcation of the district versus the block versus the cluster and the associated schools into that district. All of that can be pulled into get a comprehensive view sitting at one location on how the school has been performing. If I have to do this thing, this is a quick dashboard. There is a further detailed dashboard that we will come across. I will just give a brief overview. Complete overview will take a lot of time considering the restrictions of time we have. I will just browse through, but I will be more than happy to have a separate session to explain about the functionalities of these. So this is a report that will talk about the school type. What are the different types of school? There are primary, there is higher secondary, there is secondary, and how the bifurcation has been across the entire state. It talks about the phases of the school, old, which are the new schools that have been coming up. What are the total schools available in the district? What has been the average periodic assessment test result that has been there as a linear average for the school? Then it talks about the semester-based averages that have been derived out of the exams that have been conducted. So last 1.5 years, it has been an online learning thing. So all the learnings that had happened. The assessment also happened online. So even the SAT score and PAT score for subject wise can also be seen over here. How the girls and boys are faring against the each other with certain subjects can also be tracked. And with this information, these kind of information is not available with the current mechanism that's there, which works in isolation. The school may be only able to track information for their particular school, but in a manual fashion, a digital input or getting insight about how to use this data to the betterment of giving education in a way that will be more adapted by the students is something that is a gap that can be mitigated by using these kind of things. So if we talk about the infrastructure on how is the infrastructure available across the various things. So these reports are something that can refresh basis the selection that you make. So if there is a book bank available, there is a library, if there is a presence of library into a school, so that information is also getting captured here. Like, okay, out of the 54, 52,000 schools, there are 18,000 schools that have library and there are 30 remaining that do not have a library. What kind of books are available in the library? What is the status of the building that is present? Is it a building that is government owned, private owned, and all of that information can be captured. Then it talks about the attendance as well, how the attendance has been doing for a respective school, for every school for that matter. It talks about the teachers' attendance, it talks about the students' attendance as well, and it also gives an overview whether the student and teacher ratio has been in balance or not. Is there a necessity for us to be hiring more students for that particular school, or sorry, hiring more teachers for that particular school, or if there is a shortfall of students, the students have been absent in that particular geography, has that area been affected by certain natural calamities or something of that sort that can be bridged to make more and more students come to the school or attend the school is something that can be taken a call on. Then there are various data points that can be used over here. All you see is that this is just at a click of a button. How many teachers are there? How many Anganwadi students are there? What has been the student presence, teachers presence? What have been the average mark? What have there been any overtime that has been there? All of that information can be seen across all the states, and this can be further drilled down to various district schools and up to the student level as well. So I will just take this thing. It also helps in certain decision-making trees as well on how the correlation between various things happen. So this is a good feature of Power BI that will help. Once it has all the data, the system will automatically, using artificial intelligence, will be able to guide or give some indication with regard to the narratives that can be used for thing. If you look over here, these are system-driven narratives. They have been programmed once, and then it will be based on the data. It will give the smart narrative with regard to how many if the boys and girls ratio in certain schools is less or more, that can get highlighted here. If the girls are faring well in certain subjects and the boys aren't doing well in certain subjects, that can be programmed to be provided here. And based on the input that we receive, it can automatically give a complete overview about this in terms of smart narrative. So this is and the beauty of this particular solution is like these based on the information that is received, this particular data will also learn by itself. So it has a self-learning ability, and it will give more and more matured output for that will help in decision making. Then it also talks about some key influentials as well. What have been the key influentials that have been driving this particular education-related operations? It's coming from the server. Probably my internet is not too great. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so this is the tree that I was talking about. Sorry. So these are the indicators, key influentials, like what has been affecting the particular performance of a school or a subject or the teachers, and everything can be captured over here in terms of giving logical information in pertaining to this. Like how many schools are, let's take an example here. Management is private unaided. How many schools are private and unaided is given information over here. So all these are quick information that helps in the board to take decisions based on the data, which would have been taking a lot of time if it would have been required to be computed manually. So these are the PAT-related information scores. Then what are the SAT-related information influencers that can be used? Then there is a Q&A also that is there. This is a very good feature. You can look up for all the information pertaining to the application or the tool that we have developed into this. It's the Google of for this own application. You can ask about any questions. So these are the few questions that we have drafted for them. It talks about what is the top numbers of schools in the area, or you can ask about what has been the top 5 schools across the entire state who have been doing exponentially well with regard to the output of this thing. So it talks about that. It also gives indication about how the student ratio has been, how the sports and other gatherings have been across all the schools, whether the schools have some information. All the information that you see, it can be programmed over here, and this engine will get matured on its own eventually. I will just go back to one of the things here. It talks about, I have mentioned about the reports and other things, the integration that can happen about the reports. So all the student information that we are talking about is getting captured into the tool, and it also helps in generation of reports and other things. So if you look at this particular thing, report, this particular screen, you see the PAT score across all the subjects for this particular school. The school name over here is Tetoda Pay. Tetoda Pay is the name of the school. And how has the performance of this entire school been for a selected year in all the subjects? Then it gives a SAT information as well on how the performance has been. There is a linear that can be derived overall SAT score. How has it been? How has been the attendance for that particular school? It gives a complete attendance of the student. When we drill down, it can give attendance of the individual student and teacher as well when we talk about it. So here are the few performers that are there that the system has been able to capture. This is about the who is the top performer here. If I talk about click on this particular student, then the information will populate at the bottom over here on the students, on the selected student. Who have been the low performer can also be done. What has been the information on the teachers, who are the teachers, which subject are they teaching, that all information can be captured, can be seen in one grid. You can select, it will populate the information for that particular individual. Now, for this particular school, we are able to see the name of the principal as well, who has been the principal. The advancement that we have been able to bring in is here is a call function. So this call function is something that can be used to reach out to the individual student directly by the command center. They can reach out to the student at one go. They can talk to the student and they can understand or congratulate or get some insight from the student. Then you see at the bottom, I'm so sorry, it's just refreshing. My bad. So this is what the tool is capable of doing. It can be programmed to the way you want it to be, and it's totally customizable. So similarly, we have done it for Delhi education as well. I will just try to open this one. And we are currently working with Maharashtra state as well for developing these kind of solutions. So there are various integration abilities and possibilities that we can talk about. And this particular thing makes the life easier for the education board to take some informed decisions, like has there been inclination in terms of certain subjects, or has there been a decline in terms of learning certain subjects. That subjects can be then taken forward. The grievance redressal or suggestions that are there are limited only to a certain few set of people. Over here, everyone, including the students or the faculties, can put up suggestions which can be addressed and taken into consideration for implementation if they have a very good suggestion that they can talk about. So the overall beauty of the solution is like it can be it's a replicable model. So if one institution or one board is adopting it, it can be applied to the similar board that are within the same function. And since it is a replicable model, and the overall objective of the board is to ensure that they build up better individuals for the nation, this particular solution will help them do that. So I'm so with this, I conclude my presentation. I will be happy to address questions from people. I'm so sorry about this report. It's not populating. Probably it's my internet.
Okay, thank you, Parimal. So I think can you hear me, Amit?
I am right here, Sunil.
Yeah, right. So I think we had a couple of questions about the smartphones and mobiles. So maybe we can end with that, because even I was talking to one edtech companies. They said that even though 10-20% take mobiles on class, the entry level is like 80%. 80% of people first try it out on the mobile and
Yeah,
mobile.
and we're completely cognizant of that. And as I said on the chat, the one of the options that we didn't really go into the full depths of is device management and device security. We showed you one aspect of it with the Surface DFCI conversation, but a similar conversation needs to be had about multi-operating system or multi-platform device management and security, which is enabled through Endpoint Manager and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So that endpoint security is absolutely critical, right? It is paramount. In fact, we started the conversation at the beginning with a Windows device at the middle. We are in a Microsoft session today, so I chose to use a Windows device, but it's just as valid for a Mac or Android or an iOS device, right? Because we see that a lot across the world. And to be fair, we are a developer for Android and iOS at Microsoft ourselves, and we have many. I myself use an Android device. My colleagues use iOS devices all the time, and we use our own platform to secure our own platform. Like I can show you firsthand on my device, and I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
You will notice that there are two Outlooks and two Edge browsers. One has a little icon next to it underneath, because you'll notice that one has a work profile. So that's my Outlook that has been deployed using Endpoint Manager and is completely secure. So I have a work profile on my Samsung Android device. I have an Edge browser that is managed from the endpoint. So all of the capabilities that we showed you earlier on today with the Windows platform is also available on this platform. As an example, I also have Microsoft Defender endpoint available on this Android, which is I've got a personal endpoint Defender as well as my work manage, because that logo there next to my Defender icon also shows that. So all of the capabilities we talked about are completely available on all of these. So it's looking at things like it's hard to see, but you can see things like which apps have been protected and all. Maybe let me just get rid of this background. It's just creating all sorts of rubbish.
Virtual background is tough.
Yeah. But this is probably a great way to demonstrate what's going on, right? So you can see applications that have been secured and all of those things that are going on this particular device. You can even look at, it'll go and do things like scanning the device. So all of the things, and I think I was trying to impress this upon everybody as well, is that in the past, you've had to go and look at getting solutions from multiple vendors to make this happen. And I quickly kind of skimmed through that one slide, right, which talked about those capabilities in the platform. So if you remember at the beginning of this whole conversation, we walked through this whole journey and we went through a few of these items. We didn't go through all of it, to be completely honest. And we didn't go into every single capability and every single. But in the past, you've had to really think about bringing multiple solutions from multiple vendors together. Our aim with Microsoft 365 is to reduce that complexity of deployment and bring it into one M365 platform. That's how we have been thinking about it. Because in the past, I know customers have had to struggle a lot, and they go to RFP for each of these capabilities. They'll go to. Now, the good news is the investments we've made, the acquisitions we've made, and the research and development that happens from a security perspective. I don't know if most of the people on the call would know this. We are now the world's largest security vendor. So from a security as just a security provider, there used to be a time when the word Microsoft and security used to be laughed at. From that, we've become the world's largest security vendor, which is quite the achievement, but also is a testament to having that holistic vision to bring the solution together from identity to endpoint to application to cloud to SSO and all those other aspects that we've kind of talked through the journey today. I hope that's given a few of the folks who were asking those questions some answers. But if there are any, and anyone wants to come off mute and discuss anything, happy to try and address those points. Because I know everybody's been patiently being on this call, but if there's any last minute calls or questions, but feel free to either, and I'm happy to provide you my email if there's any questions later on.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Maybe how we can contact you in the future.
Yeah, me personally, you can address them to apawar@microsoft.com. Sure. I'm based out of Singapore, so I'll try and answer them. If I can't, I will give it to a few of the folks in India who can also help us with this.
Yeah.
But really appreciate the partnership here, Sunil. This has been a great, at least the two sessions seem to be
I know.
well received, and people have stayed on to the end. People didn't drop off.
Yeah. I think this time we went quite deep. So that is also required. That is also required, actually.
Yeah, but Sunil, this is security. It's like, how do you impress upon without it being
I agree. We also struggle. People, you really have to tell them. Your whole business could go down.
Well, absolutely, right? And no one knows that better than us because, we are targets of some of the most, biggest security targets in the world, as are many of the other Fortune 500 companies. But unfortunately, as much as we think that education is not the target, it's a very, I was talking to a customer here in Singapore and they told me they were harvested for all their user information. No one went and did anything malicious, but what it did was it created a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt with the parent community, right? It's a secondary school. So obviously they're worried about their kids' identity and kids' details going out and addresses and other details being published on the dark net or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's predatory aspects to this as well, which is a social responsibility as well, not just a technical responsibility. So
No, I know what you're saying. Last time you just joked that you joined Microsoft at the age of 2.
yeah,
But what I'm saying is today somebody would actually, join the Microsoft Smart Hybrid Network at the age of 2. The
yeah,
education,
well, which
right?
is
So
what,
it was a slip of the tongue, but it is a fact. I mean, at the age of 2, you will be into this system. So it's that important, I'd say.
correct. It is. I really appreciate everyone sticking around. I don't know, Siddharth, if you've got any comments. If not, I want to thank everyone for being here with us today, and hope it's been a good use of your time and you've learned a couple of things, and it's given you some ideas to consider for your transformation journey. Thanks, Sunil, again for being a gracious host.
Thanks, Amit, Shubham, Parimal, Siddharth. And one last word, I'll go with one thing, one ring to rule them all and one strong password to rule them all. So I'll go with that. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks,
Everyone
Sunil.
have a
Thanks,
great
Amit.
day and great
Thanks,
evening.
Amit. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, Siddharth. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.